Okay, today we're going to be thinking about careers and technology, and we're just really going to be going through a few ideas about how these two ideas have interacted. Okay, so if we think back to the beginning of this course, one of the things we talked about was the birth of careers, and one of the things that we thought about was how the idea of careers and how careers work was really developed in response to various social, economic, political, but also technological changes. And so if we think about when careers began, it was in a period in which there was large-scale industrialization, in which technology was transforming the way in which people made things, the way in which industry operated, and also the way in which people consumed. So we're thinking about the sort of first 20 to 30 years of the last century now. Now, if we think forward and we think about how work has been affected by technology, I think we can see that it's been pretty fundamental. There's been lots and lots of changes which have turned and reframed the way in which people undertake their daily working life. And clearly careers work has had to respond to that and to think about that. So I think one of the things for us to think about is how do the changes in work and how do the changes in technology interrelate, and therefore how do these things impact on our careers? So we might take examples like the introduction of computers as being something which has transformed huge numbers of people's lives. It's transformed the ways in which we work, it's transformed the ways in which we learn, and this is the sort of stuff that careers is interested in and pays a lot of attention to. So if the basic way in which the thing that careers is concerned with is changed by technology, we might expect that careers itself might be changed by technology. One of the things that perhaps we need to think about here is what exactly do we mean by technology? Technology is often just a way of describing new things rather than a particular set of items. For example, we might think when the invention of fire first happened, or when the invention of the wheel first happened, that these would have been seen quite clearly as very new pieces of technology. But now we really don't think of those things particularly as technology. We just think of them as something that's ordinary and part of our day-to-day life. So when we think about how has careers work been affected by technology, the first thing we need to recognize is that careers work is pursued within a frame which is entirely technologically dependent. We sit on chairs, we use desks, we read books. All of these things are pieces of technology. And so as we think about it, we perhaps need to think about technology as being a little bit broader than just what we see as new. So one of the first things that I think is probably important to careers work in terms of technology, and it really comes in right at the beginning, but is subsequently developed through the rest of the century, the last century, is the idea of career assessment or testing. So the idea that you can use some kind of scientific or psychological tool in order to construct a test which will help people to identify what would be a useful career choice for them, and then ultimately to measure whether they have made the right choice as well. And so we see the development through the last century of a range of different tools which people can use for psychometric testing, career assessment of various kinds. And when we start to see the use of computers, the first and probably the most obvious things that computers can do is to automate some of these functions of testing, which careers work has been doing in the past through manual means. And so technology is something which has actually been very embedded in the practice of careers and education around careers right from very early days. Tony Watts characterizes the development of the use of ICT in particular, rather than technology in general, in its use in careers work and guidance, into these four phases. So he starts by arguing that in the 60s and 70s there was what was described as the mainframe phase, and then we move on to the microcomputer phase. And really in these two periods, by and large, what people are providing is a range of information and things like psychometric testing and so on. But once we get to the 90s, we move into what we describe as the web phase. which is where we can start to actually push out information on the web pretty much for anyone to pick up. And so that starts to change the impact of ICT in guidance. We then move into what's described as the digital phase, which is the kind of current period, which elsewhere we might describe as social media or Web 2, and a variety of other phrases that you might want to have a bit of a look at. But I think the important thing is that actually the range of ways in which content online can be created, and also the range of types of content that can be created, have changed quite radically in this digital phase. What then goes on to say that actually during this development of ICT in guidance there have been three trends that have gone on. The first would be increased accessibility, that more and more people can access ICT materials or guidance materials using ICT. The second would be increased interactivity, so the opportunity would be for people to interact with the materials, perhaps with a person there but perhaps not. And then finally, what he describes as more diffused origination, so that the trend towards more diverse creators and providers of career IAG. And so that's, I think, an interesting thing in the past. Perhaps we might have said, well, careers materials were largely produced by professionals or by a small number of companies that specialised in this. Increasingly, they're produced by a wider and wider amount of people. And if you look and do a search for career on the web, I think it's very clear that that is the case. Okay, so about a year ago I sat down with some colleagues and we tried to think about what the possibilities that technology offered for careers work were. And we came up with really three main types of opportunity. And this is really based on what it does already, rather than what it potentially might do in the future. So I think the first thing that it does, and this could be through books or videos or increasingly through careers websites, is it provides information. It puts together a range of different types of information which are useful to people when they're going about making career decisions. So that's a really important thing that technology can be used for, and it's out there for a lot of different, lots and lots of different ways and lots of different websites and so on. I think the second thing that it can do is it can provide what we described as an automated interaction. So that's the kind of psychometric stuff that I've already talked about. But it's also other things as well. It's the idea that you have some kind of interaction with technology which is different depending on who you are. So what you put in changes what you get out. And a test is one example of that, but other things like games provide other examples of that. So careers work can use technology to create automated interactions, things that perhaps replace things that in the past human beings would have done, but they do them in an automatic way. And then I think the third thing that technology can do is provide a channel for communication. And as we've said here, it can do it in sort of three main ways. It can do it one-to-one. So that might be you're exchanging emails with somebody. It might be that you're making a phone call to them. The second thing it can do is one-to-many. It might be that a careers advisor is interacting with a large number of people, perhaps running an online course, or perhaps writing a blog that lots of people discuss and debate and so on. So that would be the kind of one-to-many idea. But we thought actually one of the most interesting potentials that are out there are the idea that actually there is the opportunity for many-to-many, for technology to support careers work in many-to-many ways. So what we mean by that is the fact that people are interacting online around their career. They're thinking about their career. So if we take an example of a site like, for example, LinkedIn, which is an online site where you can post your CV, you can make contact with people in business, you can have discussions and so on. Then you've got an example of something where people are already having many-to-many interactions which were related to their careers. One of the questions then is what is the appropriate role for the careers advisor to take within this kind of many-to-many social media kind of world. And we've got some thoughts about that as well. But I think this typology, I think, is hopefully quite useful in thinking through the ways in which technology can be used for careers. It can be used, therefore, to deliver information provide an automated interaction or to provide a channel for communication.